I have to confess something. When I first saw the headlines, Pope Leo XIV publicly rebuking President Trump over Iran, over immigration, over the treatment of migrants at the southern border, my first instinct was to pick a side. And I suspect I am not alone in that. Because if you have been following the news, you could be forgiven for thinking these two men share absolutely nothing. One is the most powerful political leader on earth. The other is the spiritual father of 1.4 billion Catholics. They clash loudly and publicly. The media loves the fight, and most Catholics I know have quietly sorted themselves into one camp or the other. But here is what nobody is telling you. Buried beneath all of that public tension is a quiet agreement, one that goes deeper than politics, deeper than policy, deeper than either man might be willing to admit. And it touches the most foundational moral truth in Catholic teaching. Today, we are going to find it. Keep watching. So what exactly is the question? Here it is plainly. What does the Church teach about the relationship between civil authority and the papacy, especially when both, unexpectedly, share a moral foundation even while they bitterly disagree on method? And more personally, for you, can you be a Catholic who supports Trump and still follow Church teaching? Can you respect Pope Leo and still disagree with him on immigration policy? I have been asked those questions more times in the past year than I can count, and I will be honest, for a long time, I did not have a clean answer. Think about what is actually at stake here. If Catholic teaching is simply a menu, pick the pro-life position here, set aside the migrant teaching there, take the just war doctrine only when it suits your political tribe, then it is no longer Catholic teaching. It is partisan decoration, and that is a spiritual danger more serious than any policy disagreement. What makes this harder is that both men are operating from genuine conviction. Pope Leo XIV is not a liberal politician in white vestments, and Donald Trump, whatever one thinks of his methods, has championed the most aggressive anti-abortion policies in modern American history. Both of them claim to be defending human life. So which one is right, and does the Church even force that choice? That question, I promise you, has a more surprising answer than you expect. If you are interested in deepening your faith, hit like and tell me where you are watching from. Consider subscribing to stay rooted in Catholic truth. Support our videos, team, and tools. Link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. But where does this teaching actually come from? Let me take you to one of the most surprising passages in all of Hebrew scripture. One that changes everything about how you understand civil power. In Isaiah chapter 45, God does something remarkable. He calls a pagan Persian king, Cyrus, his mashiach. That is the Hebrew word for anointed one, the same root from which we get Messiah. God did not call Cyrus his anointed because Cyrus was a believer. He called him his anointed because Cyrus, without even knowing God, served God's purposes. He freed captives, he protected innocent life, he pursued peace for God's people, moved not by faith but by something written into creation itself. Natural law. Keep that image in mind, we will need it. The Church has always known that civil authority carries real moral weight. In Romans chapter 13 verses 1 through 7, St. Paul teaches that governing authorities are instituted by God. But, and this is critical, the Church has never read Romans 13 alone. She reads it alongside Acts chapter 5 verse 29. We must obey God rather than men. Civil authority is real. It is not absolute. St. Augustine, writing in the 5th century in his great work, The City of God, made this distinction permanent. The earthly peace that civil rulers pursue is real and valuable, but always temporary, always partial, always surpassed by the deeper peace that belongs to God alone. And St. John Chrysostom, a 4th century bishop preaching in Antioch, taught plainly that civil rulers are accountable to God, and the Church bears the duty to remind them of that. The Catechism in paragraph 2309 lays down the conditions under which war can ever be justified. Strict, specific, and non-negotiable. They do not bend to political convenience. And Gaudium et Spes in section 76 declares that the Church is not bound to any political community, but she must bring moral clarity to the political order. Always, without apology. This is what Pope Leo XIV is doing, and every pope who confronted power before him, Gregory VII facing a Holy Roman Emperor, John Paul II facing communism, did the same. The prophetic role of the papacy is not a recent innovation, it is 2000 years old. So what does this mean practically for you today? Here is the teaching, as plainly as I can state it. Catholic moral theology holds what theologians call a consistent ethic of life. The principle goes back to the very beginning of the Church. A Christian document written in the 1st century, likely within living memory of the apostles, explicitly condemns abortion. The same moral logic that led early Christians to condemn abortion also led church fathers like Tertullian and Lactantius to condemn the killing of gladiators in the arena. Same principle, same foundation. The Catechism in paragraphs 2270 through 2275 calls it a dogma. Human life from conception to natural death is sacred and inviolable. Here is the twist that most people miss. Pope Leo XIV agrees with Trump on abortion completely. And when the 2-week ceasefire between the United States and Iran was announced earlier this month, Leo called it a sign of deep hope. He is not opposing Trump because he opposes peace. He is pressing Trump and every civil leader to extend the same reverence for human life to migrants, to civilians, to the poor. That is not liberal politics. That is the consistent ethic of life being applied consistently. There is a misconception I hear constantly, that Leo is just a liberal pope doing politics. Notice what that claim requires. It requires that his defense of migrants is political, while his defense of the unborn is moral. But the Church makes no such distinction. Evangelium Vitae, in its opening sections, describes the same threat to human life, whether it appears at the beginning, the end, or the margins of existence. Even voices close to the White House have acknowledged common ground, noting that protecting innocent life remains a shared priority. Even in the heart of the conflict, the quiet agreement is visible. If this channel has been helping you think through your faith with more clarity and depth, consider sharing this video with a friend who needs it right now. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you will object. The Pope should stay out of politics. I understand that instinct. But notice what that objection actually requires you to believe, that the dignity of human life is a political question, not a moral one. The moment you call the Pope's pro-life stance on abortion legitimate, but his pro-life stance on migrants political, you have already allowed partisan logic to divide what Catholic teaching holds together. Others ask, is Trump's pro-life record genuine conviction or just electoral strategy? Here, Catholic theology gives a striking answer. It does not require that a leader act from perfect interior motives. Cyrus did not know God, and yet God called him his anointed instrument. What matters morally is the act of protecting human life. As Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 45, the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. God can draw moral fruit from imperfect instruments. The Church has always known this. The real danger, the one that keeps me up at night, honestly, is not that Trump and Leo disagree on Iran. It is that Catholics will use that disagreement as permission to discard whichever part of Church teaching inconveniences their politics. That is the scandal. That is where the spiritual damage is done. So where does this leave us? Two men, one holds the most powerful political office on earth, the other holds the most ancient spiritual office in Christendom. They clash loudly, publicly, and often. But beneath all of it, beneath the headlines, the rebukes, the war of words, they share one quiet agreement: people's lives matter. From the moment of conception to natural death, every human being carries a worth that no government can grant and no crisis can revoke. That is not a political position, it is a dogma. And it is the one piece of common ground the world most desperately needs to hear right now. This week, read Isaiah chapter 45 with fresh eyes. Then pray for both men, not for one side to win, but for the truth they already share to grow larger than the differences that divide them. And if you are wrestling with how to hold your faith and your politics together, please speak with a priest or spiritual director. These are real questions, and you do not have to carry them alone. If this helped you, share it with a friend, subscribe, and check out our web app for daily Catholic resources and soul search. The world argues about the blueprint. The Church guards the foundation.